Homeless triplets are kicked out of a diner, but when a mysterious billionaire follows them, the revelation he makes leaves everyone in shock. On the chilly sidewalk of a winter evening, three small figures hesitated under the pale glow of street lamps. A biting wind carried the tempting aroma of homemade food, making three empty stomachs rumble in perfect unison. Emma, the tallest of the triplets by a mere inch, instinctively squeezed the hands of her sisters, Olivia and Ava, as they approached the brightly lit facade of Grandma Lucy's diner. The diner occupied the ground floor of an old building in the center of town. Its exposed brick walls bore the stains of time, and the neon sign flickered irregularly, with several letters already burned out. It wasn't a fancy establishment. Rather, it was the kind of place where middle-class families came on weekends, where coffee was served in chipped mugs but always poured to the brim, and where generous portions made up for the simple decor. "I'm so hungry it hurts," Ava whispered, the smallest of the three, her big brown eyes fixed on the people eating on the other side of the fogged-up window. Her worn teddy bear, affectionately named Mr. Hugs, was tucked under her thin arm, clutched tightly against her side as she sought comfort in his familiar softness whenever she felt especially scared. "I know, Ava," Emma murmured, swallowing hard to hold back her own tears. At just 5 years old, she already carried on her small shoulders a responsibility no child should have to bear, to keep her sisters alive and, above all, together. Let's try here. Maybe someone will help us. The last time we asked for help, that lady called the police," recalled Olivia, the middle triplet, always the most cautious of the three. Her eyes, identical to her sister's but perpetually more serious, surveyed the movement through the window, as though assessing potential threats. "We can't let the police catch us. He said they would split us up." The vague mention of their stepfather made all three shudder, and it wasn't because of the cold. The memories of the past few days were still too raw. The yelling, the smell of alcohol, the sound of breaking glass, and the desperate decision to flee in the middle of the night, taking only the little faded pink backpack their mother had given them on their last birthday. Rachel, their mother, had left just 2 months ago, taken by an illness they were too young to understand. "Mommy went to live with the angels," was what a neighbor told them, but all the girls knew was that their lives had become a nightmare since then. Their stepfather, who was already drinking too much when their mother was alive, had completely changed. From a man who was simply distant and occasionally rude, he had become a constant threat. The three girls, dressed in dirty, worn clothes, the same ones they had been wearing since they ran away, entered the diner timidly. The little bell over the door jingled to announce their arrival, and the warm air that enveloped them felt like a long-forgotten hug. The smell of food was even stronger inside: tomato sauce, fresh bread, grilled meat, making their mouths water and their stomachs growl even louder. An older waitress, whose name tag read Missy Clara, was the first to notice them. Her wrinkled face, usually kind toward the children who frequented the diner, tightened with concern when she saw the girls' condition. She hesitated for a moment, her maternal instinct clashing with years of experience in similar situations, before disappearing briskly toward the kitchen. The triplets sat at a table near the door, their short legs dangling without reaching the floor. Ava clung to Mr. Hugs more tightly, burying her nose in the teddy's faded synthetic fur, seeking the comforting familiarity of her one and only toy. Olivia remained on high alert, her eyes scanning every corner of the diner, memorizing exits and potential dangers, something she had learned to do in the final weeks with their violent stepfather. Seated at a table in the back of the diner, partially hidden by a section of exposed brick wall, Jack Morrison watched the scene with growing interest. He was dressed simply, high-quality jeans without ostentation, a slightly wrinkled light blue shirt, and a dark blazer that had seen better days. Nothing about his appearance suggesting he was one of the richest men in the country. At 42, Jack had built a tech empire from scratch, turning an idea born in his garage into one of the world's largest software companies. Yet on this night, as on many others, he had escaped the pressures and responsibilities of his position to dine alone in humble establishments, places that reminded him of his modest beginnings. The diner's manager, Robert Davis, approached the girls' table with hesitant steps. He was a middle-aged man, a father of 3, who had started as a dishwasher in this very diner 20 years earlier. Now, as manager, he had responsibilities that often conflicted with his paternal instincts. "Hello, girls," he began, keeping his voice deliberately low so as not to draw more attention than necessary. "Are you waiting for someone?" Emma swallowed hard, her little heart pounding so strongly she was sure everyone could hear it. "No, sir," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We're really hungry. Please." Robert looked around nervously. Some customers had already begun to notice the girls, whispering among themselves, casting glances of either pity or discomfort. "I'm sorry, little ones," he said gently but firmly. "I can't serve unaccompanied minors. It's the policy. You need to leave." Tears began to form in Ava's eyes, while Olivia clenched her fists under the table. Emma made one last attempt. "Please, my sir, just a little food. We haven't eaten in 3 days." "I can't," Robert interrupted, now more resolute. "Please, don't make me call the police." At the mention of the police, the 3 jumped up at once. Their stepfather's warning echoed in their minds. "If the police catch you, you'll go to different foster homes. You'll never see each other again." The triplets hurried into the cold night, Emma guiding her sisters through the dimly lit parking lot. Jack, who had watched the entire scene, decided to act. He quickly settled his bill and followed the girls, maintaining a respectful distance. "Hello?" he said, his voice gentle and calm. "Don't be afraid. I saw what happened in there and I'd like to help." The girls turned, startled, ready to run, but something about Jack's calm demeanor made them pause. "We don't need help," Emma said, positioning herself protectively in front of her sisters. Jack offered a soft smile, keeping his hands visible. "You know, when I was about your age, I went hungry too. I also slept outside." Olivia, always watchful, studied his clothes with distrust. "But your clothes look nice." "They are now," Jack agreed. "But it wasn't always like this. Someone helped me when I needed it most, and it changed my life. Sometimes you have to trust that there are good people out there." A loud growl from Ava's stomach broke the tension of the moment. Jack continued, "How about we go back inside, this time with me? I promise nobody will kick you out." The girls looked at one another, having one of those silent conversations only multiples seem to share. Olivia was the first to speak. "Why do you want to help us?" The question, so direct and mature for a 5-year-old, made Jack crouch down to their eye level, still keeping some distance so as not to scare them. "Because when I was little and alone, I prayed every night that someone would help me. It took a while, but one day, someone did. Since then, I promised myself that whenever I could, I'd do for others what was done for me." Emma looked back at the diner, then at her sisters. Ava was trembling from cold and hunger, and even the ever-cautious Olivia seemed to consider the offer. "Do you promise you won't split us up?" "I promise," Jack answered firmly. "You 3 will always stay together." Another moment of silence ensued, broken only by the freezing wind gusting around them. Finally, Emma took a small step forward. "All right," she said, her small voice determined. "We'll go back. But if anything happens, nothing will happen," Jack assured, standing up slowly. "We'll show that manager that sometimes people need second chances, both them and us." The girls formed their usual lineup, Emma in front, Olivia in the middle, and Ava last, still clinging to her teddy. Jack followed, keeping a respectful distance, yet his presence alone gave them a sense of security they hadn't felt in a long time. As they headed back to the diner, none of them could have imagined how that seemingly random encounter would change their lives forever. For now, they were simply 3 frightened little girls and a man trying to do the right thing, brought together by fate on a cold winter night. The decision to return to the same place they had been thrown out of was not an easy one. It demanded a courage no 5-year-old should have to possess. But something about Jack's kind smile and the memory of their mother's words about disguised angels gave them the strength to try once again. The bell above the door at Grandma Lucy's diner jingled again as Jack held it open, letting the 3 girls step inside. Once more they felt the diner's warmth wrap around them, but this time the sensation was different, a mix of fear and hope that made their small hearts pound. The remaining customers looked up from their plates, some recognizing the girls who had been kicked out just minutes before. Whispers filled the air, and heads turned to watch this unlikely group, a well-dressed man escorting 3 identical and obviously needy little girls. Robert, the manager, who was serving another table, nearly dropped his tray upon seeing them return. His face showed a mix of irritation, embarrassment, and concern. He set the tray on the counter and approached them, adjusting his tie in a nervous gesture. "Sir, I already explained to the girls that—" he began, but Jack cut him off with a gentle gesture. "Could we speak for a moment?" Jack asked, his tone calm yet carrying a natural authority that made Robert hesitate. "In private, if possible." The manager glanced at the girls, then at Jack, and finally nodded. "This way," he said, indicating an empty table in a quieter corner of the diner. "Girls," Jack turned to the triplets, "you can sit at that table over there. I promise I'll be right back." Emma, Olivia, and Ava exchanged anxious looks, the tension obvious on their identical faces. Olivia spoke what all 3 were thinking. "You'll really come back, right?" The simple question, so heavy with the fear of being abandoned, made Jack's heart ache. "You can see me from over there, right? I'm not going anywhere." "Promise." Jack followed Robert to the more secluded table where both took a seat. The manager looked uneasy, his hands fidgeting on the tabletop, betraying his agitation. "You know, Robert," Jack began, his voice gentle but firm, "many years ago, I was in the same situation as these girls. I was only 6 years old, alone, hungry, and cold. I walked into a diner a lot like this one, and a lady there, her name was Sarah, she not only paid for my meal, but completely changed my life." Robert blinked, surprised by the revelation. Jack went on, "Those 3 girls lost their mother recently. They're running from an abusive stepfather. They haven't eaten in 3 days, and you know what their biggest fear is? It's not hunger, it's not the cold, it's being separated." The manager swallowed, his gaze drifting involuntarily toward the triplets. They were huddled together like frightened birds, seeking warmth from one another. "I'm not asking you to break your rules," Jack continued. "I'm here, a responsible adult, willing to pay for their dinner. More than that, I'm ready to help them, just like Sarah helped me. But first, I need you to help me." Robert was silent for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll need to see some ID from you. Just for the record." Jack smiled, pulling out his wallet. As Robert examined his documents, his eyes widened. You're Jack Morrison." "The Jack Morrison?" "Yes," Jack replied simply, "but I'd appreciate it if you kept that to yourself." When Jack returned to the girls' table, Mr. Clara had already brought 3 steaming bowls of soup, fresh bread, and glasses of orange juice. The aroma made the girls' stomachs growl in unison. "Slowly," Jack advised gently. "When you haven't eaten for a long time, you have to go easy at first. I learned that the hard way when I was little." The girls looked at him curiously. Olivia was the first to speak. "You said outside that you've been hungry before. Is that really true?" Jack smiled softly, tearing the bread into smaller pieces for them. "Yes, it's true. When I was 6, I was on my own on the streets. I went hungry, I was cold, scared. A lot like what you're going through right now." "How did you get better?" Emma asked, her watchful eyes fixed on him. "A very special lady helped me," Jack replied, momentarily lost in his memories. "I had walked into a diner just like this. I was shivering from hunger and cold. The manager wanted to throw me out, but that lady, Sarah was her name, stood up for me. She didn't just pay for my meal. She looked after me later, helped me study, get a better life." "Where is she now?" Ava asked, hugging her teddy bear. Jack smiled with a touch of sadness. "I don't know, I lost contact with her many years ago, but I never forgot what she did for me. So when I saw you tonight, I knew I had to help. It's like a cycle, you see. Someone helped me when I needed it most, and now I can help you." The girls absorbed his words in silence, carefully eating their soup. Emma spoke first. "Our mom always said there are angels in disguise out there." "She sounds like a very wise woman," Jack said softly. "Do you want to tell me about her?" The 3 paused their meal, exchanging looks. Emma answered, "She was the most beautiful person in the world, inside and out. She always said both mattered. She sang us to sleep, Olivia added, even when she was tired from work. And she braided our hair, Ava said. Every day a different style. They told him about their mother's illness, leukemia, and how everything changed after her death 2 months ago. They talked about their stepfather, Tom, who started drinking heavily and became violent, threatening to separate them. How they had run away in the middle of the night, taking only a backpack and Ava's teddy bear. Jack listened intently, each word fueling his determination to help them. When Miss Clara brought dessert, chocolate ice cream with hot fudge ice on the house, he had already made up his mind. "You know," he said, watching them enjoy the ice cream, "that lady, Sarah, taught me something very important. She said sometimes we have to go through hard times so we can recognize when someone else is in need, and when we recognize it, it's our duty to help." "Like you're doing for us?" Olivia asked, ever the insightful one. "Exactly," Jack smiled. "And just like Sarah helped me build a better life, I want to help you. But first, we need to make sure you're safe and well cared for. What do you think?" The three exchanged another round of silent looks. Emma spoke, her voice small but firm. "You promise we won't be separated?" "I promise," Jack said, just as firmly. "The three of you will stay together. That's a promise I intend to keep, just like Sarah kept hers with me." While paying the bill and leaving a generous tip for Ms. Clara, along with special thanks to Robert, Jack was already planning his next moves. The next day he'd begin investigating the girl's story, but for tonight, the most important thing was to keep his promise. They would stay together, and they would be safe. The diner's clock showed it was nearly 9 p.m. Ava was already struggling to keep her eyes open. Her exhaustion after the last few days was catching up with her. Even Olivia, always vigilant, let out a few yawns. Only Emma still tried to appear alert, her protective instinct alive despite the safer environment. "I think it's time we head out," Jack said softly, noticing the girl's sleepy state. "You need to rest." Robert Eel, who had been watching from a distance, approached the table. His demeanor had changed completely. Where there had been distrust before, there was now understanding, maybe even a touch of regret. "Mr. Morrison," he began quietly, I want to apologize for how I acted before, and I want you to know you're always welcome here." Jack nodded in gratitude while helping Ava up. She was nearly asleep on her feet. Olivia picked up the faded pink backpack, and Emma, as usual, took the lead, although her own steps were shaky from fatigue. Mrs. Clara appeared one last time with a paper bag. "I made a few sandwiches," she said, handing it to Jack, "in case they get hungry later." The girls offered shy goodbyes to the diner's staff, and Jack couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere had changed. The same customers who once looked upon them with suspicion were now smiling sympathetically, some even waving goodbye. Walking out of the diner, Jack carrying a dozing Ava in his arms, he thought of Sarah and how a single act of kindness could completely alter the course of someone's life, or, in this case, 3 lives. The next day, he would start his investigation, using his resources and contacts to uncover the truth about the girl's situation. But tonight, his only mission was to give them a peaceful, safe place to sleep. What Jack didn't know as he led the sleepy triplets to his car was that fate had woven a far more intricate tapestry than he realized. Sarah's story, the woman who had saved him so many years ago, would soon become entwined with the triplets' story in a way no one could have predicted. As they left Grandma Lucy's diner that night, Jack made a decision that would forever change not only the triplets' lives, but his own as well. "I have a big house," he said, helping a half-asleep Ava into the back seat of his Mercedes. "Lots of empty rooms. You can stay there at least until we sort everything out." Emma and Olivia exchanged hesitant looks, but the exhaustion and the cold night made Jack's offer too hard to refuse. During the drive, both tried to stay awake, while Jack occasionally glanced at them through the rearview mirror, his heart clenching at everything these little ones had endured. As the car passed through the wrought iron gates of the Morrison estate, the girls who were still awake widened their eyes. The garden, even at night, was impressive, with illuminated fountains and neatly trimmed flower beds. The main house, an elegant 3-story building, looked like a castle from the fairy tales their mother used to read to them. "You live here?" Olivia asked in a hushed, astonished voice. "I do," Jack replied kindly, "and so do you now, for as long as you need." Maria, the housekeeper who had been working for Jack for over a decade, was already waiting at the door. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and a welcoming smile that faintly resembled Mr. Clara's, she greeted them warmly. "Maria," Jack said, carefully carrying a sleeping Ava. "These are Emma, Olivia, and Ava. They'll be staying with us. Could you prepare the pink bedroom in the east wing? And we'll need clean clothes, toiletries." "Of course, Mr. Morrison," Maria replied, her maternal gaze quickly assessing the girls. "The bath is already drawn, and I've got some clothes from my granddaughter that might fit them for now." The girls were led to a bathroom bigger than the entire bedroom they used to share in their old home. An antique clawfoot tub was filled with warm, fragrant bubbles. For the first time in days, their faces lit up with genuine smiles. "Look at all these bubbles," Ava exclaimed, waking up fully at the scent of soap. Maria helped the girls with their bath, gently detangling their messy hair as she hummed an old lullaby. Emma, ever protective, initially tried to take care of her sisters herself, but gradually relaxed under the housekeeper's nurturing presence. After their bath, dressed in clean, soft pajamas, still a bit oversized but infinitely more comfortable than their dirty clothes, the triplets were led to a spacious bedroom with a king-size bed and pink silk drapes. "It's like a princess's room," Ava whispered, clutching Mr. Huggs, who had also received a quick wash. Jack watched from the doorway while Maria helped them settle into the large bed. All three, as usual, stayed close together, Emma in the middle, Olivia and Ava on either side. Exhaustion finally won them over, and within minutes they were fast asleep. "I'll make something light for when they wake up," Maria said in a hushed voice. "They look so tired, poor things." Jack nodded, his eyes still fixed on the three small figures in the bed. "Thank you, Maria. Tomorrow we'll get them everything they need: clothes, toys, school supplies." But for now, with the girls finally safe and sleeping, it was time to start his investigation. In his study, Jack picked up his phone and dialed a seldom-used number. "Charles, Jack Morrison here. I need your services. It's a delicate case." Morning light filtered through the silk curtains of the guest room where the triplets slept soundly. Jack watched from the doorway, still marveling at how the three, even in sleep, managed to stay close. Emma in the middle, Olivia and Ava on either side, as if they couldn't bear the thought of separating, even while dreaming. The previous night had been a challenge. When they arrived at his estate on the outskirts of the city, the girls were initially overwhelmed by the grandeur of the place, the imposing facade, the meticulously maintained garden, and the foyer with its crystal chandelier seemed like another world. But exhaustion outweighed curiosity, and after a warm bath and clean clothes provided by Maria, they finally slept in peace. Now that the girls were safe, it was time to act. In his office, Jack picked up the phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Charles, it's Jack Morrison. I need your services. It's a delicate situation." Charles Davis was the best private investigator in town. Discreet, efficient, and above all, ethical. Qualities for which Jack paid a premium. "I'm listening," came the deep voice on the other end of the line. Jack provided what details he had. 3 identical 5-year-old girls, a deceased mother named Rachel, last name unknown, and an abusive stepfather named Tom. He explained how they had run away and his concerns for their well-being. "I want everything," Jack specified. "Birth certificates for the girls, their mother's death certificate, medical records, employment history, neighbors, anyone who can tell us more about their lives, and especially, I want to know everything about this stepfather." "Understood," Charles replied. "I'll put my best team on it. When do you need the information?" "Yesterday," said Jack. "But I know a thorough job takes time. Keep me updated on any major findings." After hanging up, Jack opened his laptop and started his own parallel research. Years of building a tech empire had granted him access to resources and databases most people didn't even know existed. The first bits of information started trickling in later that afternoon. Charles was indeed efficient. "We found the death record," the investigator reported. Rachel Carter, 32 years old, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, passed away at Sunrise Medical Center 2 months ago. Worked as a cashier at a supermarket and did cleaning jobs on weekends to make ends meet. Jack took mental notes as Charles continued. The girls were all born at the same hospital: Emma, Olivia, and Ava Carter. It was a complicated birth. They stayed in the neonatal ICU for 2 weeks. The biological father is not listed on the birth certificates. What about her life? Neighbors. We're conducting interviews now. What we've found so far is that she was very well liked in the neighborhood. She always took care of the girls alone until she met Tom Weber 2 years ago. They got married a year ago. Jack frowned. "Tell me about him." There was a pause on the other end of the line. This is where things get concerning. Weber has a criminal record. Nothing big enough to keep him locked up long. Petty thefts, disorderly conduct, DUI. But after Rachel died, neighbors say his behavior worsened significantly. In what way? Frequent shouting, sounds of things breaking. One neighbor said she saw bruises on the girls, but when asked, they said they had fallen while playing. Typical signs of child abuse. Victims learn to cover for the abuser. Jack felt his blood boil. In his mind, he saw the 3 sleeping girls in the next room, and the thought of someone hurting them made his stomach turn. "There's more," Charles went on. "Weber made several withdrawals from a savings account Rachel had for the girls, some small fund she built up with extra jobs. We also found out he's heavily in debt to local loan sharks. Any sign he's looking for the girls? Not so far. From what we've gathered, he reported them missing, but he was visibly drunk when he did it. The police didn't take his story very seriously." Jack typed a few notes on his tablet. "Keep digging. I want every detail on his life, where he drinks, who he associates with, how much he owes, and especially if he really intends to find the girls." After hanging up, Jack leaned back in his chair, processing all the information. Rachel Carter had been a fighter, raising 3 daughters alone, juggling 2 jobs, building a decent life despite the odds. Then, cruelly, the man who should have supported her after her death became the biggest threat to her daughters. The intercom buzzed. It was Maria. "Mr. Morrison, the girls are awake. They're a bit startled to be in a strange place." "I'm on my way," Jack replied, closing his notes. As he climbed the stairs toward the girls' room, his mind was already racing with his next steps. He would need lawyers, the best, to secure custody of the girls. He'd need to adapt his home and his life for 3 5-year-olds. He'd need documents, clothes, school supplies. The list was long, but first he had to win their complete trust. And he knew that would be a gradual process. For now, he'd focus on making them feel safe and loved. Opening the door, he found the 3 sitting on the big bed, looking around with a mix of wonder and apprehension. Emma, as always, spoke first. "Mr. Jack, is this all real?" Jack smiled, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It's real, Emma. And you can stay here as long as you need." "But what about Tom?" Olivia asked, always the most concerned with practical details. "Don't worry about him," Jack said firmly. "You're safe here, I promise." What he didn't say, what he didn't need to say yet, was that he was already working on a plan to ensure Tom Weber would never come near the girls again. The investigation had only just begun, but Jack Morrison wasn't known for doing things halfway. Watching the triplets begin to relax, timidly exploring the room with their curious eyes, Jack made a silent vow to the memory of Rachel Carter. Her daughters would have the life she always wanted for them, safe, happy, and, above all, together. By dawn the next day, Jack Morrison was already in his study, reviewing for the 3rd time the preliminary reports on Rachel Carter and her daughters. The first week with the girls in the mansion had been a mixture of adaptation and discovery, for both them and him. Maria, the housekeeper, entered quietly, carrying a cup of coffee. "They're still asleep," she said with a maternal smile. "Yesterday was a big day for them at the library." Jack nodded, remembering how Olivia had spent hours absorbed in an astronomy book, while Emma and Ava pored over an old photo album. It was amazing how, in just a week, they were already starting to show their unique personalities, blossoming under the care and safety they'd found here. The intercom rang. It was Dr. Helen Adams, the family attorney he'd hired to handle the girl's case. Moments later, she entered his study carrying a thick folder of documents. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," she greeted, taking a seat across from his desk. "I've analyzed the legal situation thoroughly and, well, we face some significant challenges." "I'm all ears," Jack said, pushing his coffee cup aside. "Technically, what we have here is a case of kidnapping," Helen began, raising a hand when she saw Jack about to protest. I know. The girls ran away on their own and you're just protecting them. But in the eyes of the law, Thomas Weber is still their legal guardian. That monster isn't coming near them again," Jack stated firmly. "I agree, but we must do this the right way," Helen explained. "We have some options. We can file for emergency temporary custody, claiming imminent risk to the children's well-being. But we need solid evidence. Aren't the neighbors' abuse reports enough? They help, but we need more. Medical records, official testimonies, documentation of his debts. The judge will also want to know why you, a single man with no prior connection to these children, are the best option for them." Jack stood up, walking to the window. Outside, he could see the play equipment he'd bought for the girls, 3 identical bikes they had yet to ride, a life-size dollhouse, brand new swings. "I'll go to their old neighborhood today," he said. "I want to talk to the neighbors, learn more about Rachel, gather all the evidence I can." Helen nodded approvingly. "Good. The more information we have, the stronger our case. But Jack," she hesitated, "be prepared for a tough battle. Weber may not be a good stepfather, but he does have the law on his side." Before Jack could reply, he heard laughter in the hallway. The triplets were awake, playing with Maria. The sound was a stark contrast to the terror he'd seen in their eyes that first night in the diner, fueling his determination even more. "I'll do whatever it takes," he declared. "Hire specialists, psychologists, social workers. I want detailed reports showing this is the best home for them." Helen smiled, jotting down notes. "I've already started making calls." "But Jack, there's something else. Weber has hired a lawyer. He's demanding the girls be returned." Jack's blood ran cold. At that moment, a small knock on the door interrupted their conversation. It was Emma, still in pajamas, her brown hair messy from sleep. "Jack," she asked timidly. They'd agreed to drop the Mr. the day before. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, little one," he said, gesturing for her to come in. Helen began gathering her documents, sensing the legal discussion was over for now. Emma entered, followed by her sisters. Rarely did any of them venture anywhere alone. Olivia clutched one of the library books, and Ava hugged her ever-present Mr. Hugs. We were thinking," Emma began, exchanging glances with her sisters like she always did when she was nervous. "Could we just call our room now? Not the guest room?" The question was so simple, yet so loaded with meaning, that Jack's heart twisted. He knelt to be at their eye level. "Of course you can," he answered with a smile. "Actually, I was thinking we could go shopping to decorate it however you like." Their faces lit up, but Olivia, ever the practical one, asked, "But can we really stay forever?" Jack cast a quick glance at Helen, who stood by the door with a supportive smile, before responding. "Come here," he said, taking a seat on the office sofa. The 3 girls gathered around him, Emma and Olivia on either side, Ava in his lap. "There's something important I need to tell you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There are some people who have to give permission for you to officially live here. Judges, lawyers, it's complicated." "Like Ms. Helen?" Olivia asked, ever observant. "Exactly," Jack confirmed. "But I want you to know one thing." He held all 3 of their hands, forming a little circle right there on the sofa. "I solemnly promise I will do everything, absolutely everything, to keep you safe and together. That's a promise I plan to keep for the rest of my life." "Like the promise Miss Sarah made to you?" Emma asked, her sharp eyes studying his face. Hearing Sarah's name made Jack's chest tighten. Exactly like her promise. And you know what? She never broke that promise to me. Not once. After this moment in the office, Jack knew he couldn't waste any time. Once he was sure the girls were content with Maria, He grabbed his car keys and headed to the old neighborhood where Rachel had lived. It was a modest yet respectable part of town, with small, well-kept houses. He parked outside what used to be Rachel's address, 237 Maple Street. The house, now vacant, showed recent signs of neglect: drawn curtains, an overgrown yard, unopened mail piling up at the door. "She was a good woman, that Rachel," said a voice behind him. An older woman stood on her porch next door, watering some flowers. "Hard-working, devoted to those girls. Such a shame what happened." Jack approached, introducing himself. The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Wilkins, seemed eager to talk. "I never trusted that Tom," she continued, shaking her head. "Rachel changed after marrying him. Became more reserved, barely talked to anyone anymore, but she loved those girls. Oh, how she loved them." "Did you know Rachel well?" Jack asked. "As much as she let me," Mrs. Wilkins said with a shrug. "She was very private about her past. All she talked about was her present and her daughters, but something seemed off, you know. Sometimes she got letters that upset her, and once a month, without fail, she went to visit someone at the Sunrise retirement home." Jack frowned, making a mental note. "She never mentioned family." "Only once," the older woman answered, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "It was the night Tom drank too much and caused trouble. Rachel came over here, crying. She said something about her mother being right about men like him, but when I tried to ask more, she clammed up." Other neighbors Jack visited offered similar stories. Everyone recalled Rachel as a loving, hard-working mother, but no one knew much about her past or her family. One intriguing detail repeatedly came up: her monthly visits to the Sunrise retirement home. There was also a photo, mentioned Mr. Johnson, a neighbor across the street. "Once I saw Rachel looking at an old photo, crying a lot. When I asked if she was okay, she tucked it away and said it was just a reminder of a life that no longer existed." With each new piece of information, the mystery surrounding Rachel only deepened. Who had she really been? Why had she kept her past so hidden? And who was she visiting every month at the retirement home? Back at the estate that evening, Jack found the girls playing in the garden under Maria's watchful eye. As soon as they spotted him, they came running, their laughter filling the early evening air. "Jack, we made drawings for you!" Ava shouted, proudly holding a sheet of paper. Looking at their three smiling faces, so similar to Rachel's photos, Jack silently vowed he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the whole truth. It wasn't just about the legal documents anymore. It was about understanding the secrets of a woman who had fought so hard to keep her daughters safe. "Come on," he said, scooping Ava up while Emma and Olivia held his hands. "Let's see those drawings, and then maybe you can tell me more stories about your mum." As they walked inside, Jack's mind turned over the clues he'd collected. The Sunrise retirement home was his next destination. Something told him he'd find critical answers there. But for now, his only priority was being there for his girls, gradually building the trust and love that would form the foundation of their new family. That night, after dinner, Jack sat in his study, surrounded by notes he'd gathered throughout the day. The accounts from neighbors played over and over in his mind. Rachel's monthly visits to the retirement home, her mysterious letters, the photo that made her cry, and her vague allusions to a mother who had warned her about men like Tom. Somewhere in this puzzle lay a truth he needed to discover, not just to ensure the girl's custody, but because something in his heart told him there were more layers to Rachel's story than anyone realized. A soft knock at the door broke his concentration. It was Maria. "The girls are asking for you to say goodnight," she said with a smile. "Seems they can't fall asleep without your visit now." Jack smiled, putting away his notes. Some discoveries could wait until tomorrow. In the girls' bedroom, he found them already in pajamas, nestled together on the large bed they chose to share, despite having other rooms available. "Can you tell us a story?" Ava asked, her eyelids heavy with sleep. "How about you tell me one tonight?" Jack suggested, sitting at the edge of the bed. "Maybe something about your mom." The girls exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations only they understood. Emma took the lead. "Mom used to say we were special," she began softly. "Not just because we're triplets, but because we're part of a bigger story." "She never told us what the story was," Olivia added, furrowing her brow. She just said one day we'd understand. And she always cried when she looked at that old photo, Ava said, hugging Mr. Huggs. Which photo? Jack asked. His interest piqued. We're not really sure, Emma replied. She kept it in a special box along with some letters. But Tom, he broke the box one day when he was angry. Jack felt his heart constrict. Another piece of the puzzle, another reason to keep investigating. Tomorrow, he said, pulling the covers over them. I'm going to visit somewhere your mom used to go. Maybe I'll find some answers there. You'll come back, right? Ava asked, a hint of anxiety in her voice. Always, Jack promised, kissing each of their foreheads. We're a family now, remember? And family means no one gets left behind. When the three finally fell asleep, Jack lingered a moment longer, watching them. In just a few weeks, these girls had become the center of his world. And now, with the day's new revelations, he felt he was on the brink of uncovering something far bigger. Tomorrow he would visit the Sunrise retirement home. He had a feeling vital answers lay there, perhaps even the key to this entire mystery. But for now, gazing at his peacefully sleeping daughters, Jack knew he had already found what mattered most: a family. Later that night, after tucking the girls in, Jack returned to his study to review all the information he had gathered throughout the day. Notes from his neighborly chats lay spread over his desk, each one hinting that Rachel's life had been far more complicated than it seemed. The silence of the night was broken by a text message, Dr. Helen reminding him of next week's hearing. In just a few days, they'd have to present convincing evidence to secure temporary custody of the girls. Jack walked over to the window and stared into the starry night. The visit to the neighborhood had raised more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Rachel Carter had been a woman of many secrets, and unraveling them was crucial to protecting her daughters. He took one last look into the girls' room before heading to bed. They slept soundly, Emma in the middle, Olivia and Ava on either side. Their peaceful faces showed no trace of the fear that once haunted them. "I'll find the whole truth," he whispered, more to himself than to them. "And I'll keep you safe no matter what." That afternoon, after leaving the girls in Maria's capable hands, Jack drove again to the old neighborhood where Rachel had lived with her daughters. It was the second visit, and this time he was determined to uncover more. The day was clear and warm when he parked in front of 237 Maple Street. The house the girls had shared with their mother looked increasingly neglected. The yard overrun by weeds, the curtains permanently drawn, and a stack of mail piled at the entrance. "You must be the man caring for the girls," said a woman's voice. She stood on the neighboring porch watering her plants. "I saw you here yesterday talking to Mrs. Wilkins," Jack confirmed with a nod, introducing himself. The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Adams, was willing to chat. "I always thought it was strange how private she was," Mrs. Adams said. "She lived here for years, but no one knew much about her life before coming here. All we heard about were her daughters." Similar conversations with other neighbors revealed the same pattern. Everyone knew Rachel as a devoted mother and diligent worker, but no one knew details of her past or family. It was as though she had appeared out of nowhere with 3 babies, determined to build a new life. Back at his estate at the end of the day, Jack shut himself in his study, reflecting on what he had, or more accurately, hadn't, discovered. Why all the secrecy? What was Rachel trying so hard to protect or hide? Glancing out the window, he saw the girls in the garden with Maria. Their laughter floated up to him, reminding him why this investigation mattered so much. Tomorrow he would continue his quest for answers, but for now, ensuring those 3 little girls kept smiling was most important. Morning had barely broken when Jack Morrison was once again in his study, surrounded by documents and notes on Rachel Carter. The preliminary reports from Charles Nee, his investigator, offered only the basics: her birth date, the girl's records, her job history. But Jack knew that to truly understand who Rachel was, he needed to go beyond the paperwork. After confirming that the triplets were content with Maria, who had become like a surrogate grandmother, Jack got into his car and drove back to the neighborhood where Rachel lived. This was his second trip to the area, but this time he was more determined than ever. The sun was bright and hot when he parked in front of 237 Maple Street. The house where Rachel and the girls had lived showed escalating neglect. The yard was overgrown, the curtains stayed closed, and old mail piled up by the door. "You must be the man looking after the children," called out a neighbor, a woman with white hair. She stood on her porch wearing a friendly smile. "I saw you here talking to Mrs. Wilkins yesterday." Jack introduced himself properly, and soon found himself on her porch sipping strong coffee as she recounted stories of Rachel. "She arrived about 6 years ago," the woman, Mrs. Cora, began, her gaze drifting into distant memories. "I'll never forget that day. A young woman alone with 3 tiny babies and just one old suitcase." She looked frightened but determined. "How did she settle in?" Jack asked, genuinely interested. "At first it was very tough," Mrs. Cora said, pouring more coffee. "She started doing house cleaning around the neighborhood. I hired her a few times myself, not that I really needed it, but I saw how hard she worked. Then she got a cashier's job at the supermarket, but kept doing weekend cleaning." Jack took notes in a small notebook as Mrs. Cora went on. "The most impressive thing was how she cared for the girls. They were always clean, well-fed, their hair neatly done in matching styles. She'd walk them all to school every day, 3 separate trips on foot since she couldn't afford the bus fare." "She never spoke about her life before coming here?" he asked. Mrs. Cora shook her head. "Rachel was very private about her past. She only talked about the present and the future she wanted for the girls. But sometimes I'd see her crying alone in the yard at night." Jack looked up from his notes, intrigued. "Crying?" "Yes," Mrs. Cora confirmed, "especially on nights with a full moon. She'd be there, staring at the sky as if searching for answers. When I asked if she was okay, she'd just say she was tired." Throughout the day, Jack spoke to more neighbors. Each conversation painted new details of Rachel's life, small pieces of a complicated puzzle. Mr. Brown, the retired school janitor where the girls had studied, recalled how Rachel was always there early to pick them up, even though she was clearly exhausted from work. "And she always had a smile," he said, "even on her hardest days." Ms. Bridget, who worked at the local bakery, remembered how Rachel bought day-old bread because it was cheaper, yet always saved a few coins to buy a special treat for the girls on weekends. "It was their happiest moment," she said, smiling. Seeing those 3 identical smiles choosing one chocolate cupcake to share. At the supermarket where Rachel had worked, her former co-workers had more stories. "She never complained," said Sandra, another cashier, "even when she had to do overtime, even when she looked exhausted. She always said her girls deserved a better life." As the day progressed, Jack felt he was getting to know Rachel through other people's eyes, a strong, determined woman who faced countless hardships without ever losing her dignity or her love for her daughters. Yet there was something else, something everyone referenced in their own way, a mystery surrounding her arrival in the neighborhood, an absolute secrecy about her past, moments of deep sadness she tried to hide. Returning to his estate in the late afternoon, Jack found the girls in the library, their new favorite spot these days. He decided to seize the opportunity to hear their own memories of their mother. "What was a typical day like with her?" he asked, sitting with them on the plush carpet. Emma, Olivia, and Ava exchanged glances, as they always did before sharing important memories. Emma spoke first. "Mom would wake up really early," she said. "We were still asleep most of the time, but sometimes I pretended to be asleep just so I could watch her getting everything ready. She would leave notes in our lunch boxes," Olivia added, "always with smiley faces and hearts." "And she sang to us at bedtime," Ava said, clutching Mr. Hugs. Even if she was really tired, Jack listened intently, noticing how the girls' eyes lit up whenever they talked about their mom. "What about weekends?" he asked. "Oh, on Saturdays she cleaned Ms. Teresa's house," Emma explained. "But Sundays were our special day. She made pancakes for breakfast." "With a chocolate smiley face," Ava interrupted, grinning. "And then we'd go to the playground," Olivia continued. "Even if it was really hot or really cold, she said Sunday was family day." They continued sharing memories, how Rachel taught them to read with old comic books she found at flea markets, how she sewed late at night to fix torn clothes, how she invented games and activities that required no expensive toys. "Mum always told us we were special," said Emma after a pause, "not just because we're triplets, but because we were part of an important story. Jack leaned forward, intrigued. What story? She never really said, Olivia answered, frowning. She just said, we'd understand one day. But she got sad whenever she mentioned it. The neighbors' accounts and the girls' memories painted an increasingly intriguing portrait of Rachel Carter, a woman who had arrived out of nowhere, determined to create a new life, a devoted mother, working tirelessly to provide for her daughters, yet also someone who bore a secret, a story she never shared, one that weighed heavily on her heart. That night, after putting the girls to bed, Jack returned to his study. Spread across his desk were all the notes he had made throughout the day. Testimonies from neighbors, the memories shared by the triplets, the small details that gradually revealed who Rachel had been. Something wasn't adding up. How had a young, seemingly well-educated woman just appeared with 3 infants? Why choose that specific neighborhood? And why such secrecy about her past? His eyes fell on one particular note. Sometimes she cried alone in the yard, late at night, looking at the stars like she was searching for answers. Jack stood and walked to the window of his study, his gaze drifting over the same starry sky that Rachel had often contemplated through tear-filled eyes. What answers had she been seeking? What secrets had she guarded so fiercely, preferring to face every hardship alone rather than reveal them? Somewhere in this puzzle lay a truth he needed to find, not just to secure custody of the girls, but because something in his heart insisted that Rachel's story had more layers than met the eye. Before going to bed, he made a final stop by the girls' room. They slept soundly, as always, all together on the big bed, Emma in the middle, Olivia and Ava on each side. Watching their peaceful faces, so reminiscent of Rachel as described by the neighbors, he renewed his determination. Rachel Carter had dedicated her life to protecting her daughters, facing the world alone to keep them safe and together. Now it was his turn to continue that work, and for that he needed the whole story, no matter how mysterious or intriguing it might be. Back in his study, Jack spent a few more hours reviewing his notes. The details just didn't line up. A young, educated woman simply appearing out of nowhere with 3 infants. Her precise Sunday schedule, as if she were following a plan. The late nights she spent crying under the stars. The sweet notes in the girls' lunchboxes, constantly reminding them they were special and part of something bigger. There was a pattern hidden there, between the lines. Rachel wasn't just a single mother running from tough circumstances. She was protecting something, hiding a secret she felt was important enough to rebuild her life from scratch. "What were you hiding, Rachel?" Jack murmured to himself, gazing again at the starry sky outside. And from whom? Tomorrow would be another day of investigation, and each discovery only seemed to bring more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. The mystery surrounding Rachel Carter ran far deeper than he had initially imagined. Sunday morning at the Morrison estate began peacefully. Jack was in his study, still pondering yesterday's revelations about Rachel, when he heard a gentle knock on the door. It was Emma, holding something to her chest, with Olivia and Ava right behind her. "Jack," she called softly, we want to show you something." He smiled, motioning for them to come in. The 3 approached his desk, somewhat hesitant. Emma glanced at her sisters before extending what she was holding. A small worn shoebox, dented at one corner. "It's our treasure," Olivia explained. "We managed to hide it from Tom when we ran away." Carefully, Emma lifted the lid. Inside were clearly precious items, colorful ribbons their mother used for braiding their hair, small notes with smiley faces from their lunchboxes, and a little diary. "There's something special in here," Emma said, rummaging in the bottom of the box. "Mom always looked at this photo when she thought we were asleep." She pulled out an old photograph, slightly creased at the corners but well preserved. Jack took it carefully, and as his eyes focused on the image, it felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. The photo showed a younger Rachel, radiant and smiling at the camera. She was sitting on a park bench in a simple blue dress, her long brown hair just like her daughter's, ruffled by a light breeze. But it wasn't just her beauty that made Jack's heart skip a beat. It was the young man sitting beside her on that bench, a version of himself from 15 years ago, gazing at Rachel with adoration in his eyes. "Jack?" Ava asked, worried. "Why are you crying?" He hadn't noticed the tears rolling down his cheeks. His hands trembled slightly as he held the photo. I knew your mother," he finally said, his voice choked. "A long time ago." The girls came closer, their eyes wide with surprise. "Are you the guy in the picture?" Olivia asked, ever observant. "With Mom?" Jack nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the image. Memories he'd long buried flooded back, the smell of Rachel's simple perfume, the sound of her laugh, the brightness in her eyes when she talked about her dreams. "It was 15 years ago," he began, voice full of reminiscence. "I was just starting my company, working day and night in a tiny garage. Your mum, she worked at the coffee shop I went to every morning." The Triplets settled on the carpet, completely absorbed in his story. Jack continued. "Rachel always saved the best slice of pie for me. She'd say I needed the energy to make my dreams happen. We started talking every day. She was in college, studying at night, dreaming of becoming a teacher." "Mom wanted to be a teacher?" Emma asked, surprised. "Yes," Jack said, lost in the memory. "She loved to teach. On weekends, she tutored underprivileged kids." Pausing, he looked at the photo again. "This picture was taken the day I got my first big contract. Rachel had helped me revise the proposal for weeks. When I signed the deal, the first thing I did was rush to the coffee shop to tell her." "Were you two dating?" Ava asked, her eyes bright with a child's romantic fantasy. Jack gave a sad smile. "We were in love, yes, but we were so young, so focused on our dreams. I traveled more and more for work. The company started growing. And one day when I went back to the coffee shop, Rachel was gone." "Why did she leave?" Olivia asked. "I don't know," Jack replied honestly. "Nobody could tell me where she went. I tried to find her, but..." His voice broke. How many times had he thought about Rachel over the years? How many times had he wondered what happened to her, where she had gone, why she disappeared without a trace? "She never told us about you," Emma said thoughtfully. "But she looked at that photo all the time," Olivia added, "especially when she was sad." Jack gently ran his fingers over the image. Rachel looked so young, full of hope and dreams. What had happened to turn that bright college student into the secretive woman who raised 3 daughters alone, holding on to secrets he was only now beginning to uncover? Can I keep the photo for a while?" he asked. "I promise I'll give it back." The girls shared another silent look. Then Emma said, "Yes, but please take good care of it, okay? It's really special to us." "Very special," Jack agreed, his heart brimming with emotion. As the girls carefully placed the rest of their treasures back into the box, Jack couldn't stop staring at the photograph. Fate had a peculiar sense of humor. After 15 years, Rachel was back in his life through her daughters. More than ever, he needed to understand what happened. Why had Rachel disappeared so suddenly? What led her to rebuild her life completely, leaving her dream of teaching behind? And why had she kept that photo all these years? Jack watched the Triplets leave his study, whispering excitedly about the revelation they'd just uncovered. The mystery of Rachel Carter had taken a new dimension, one that touched his own past and his heart. Left alone once more, he turned his attention to the picture again. Every detail of that day returned to him with surprising clarity: the gentle afternoon breeze, the smell of popcorn from a nearby vendor, the way Rachel had nervously smoothed her blue dress before a passing stranger snapped the shot. "Why didn't you tell me, Rachel?" he whispered, lightly running his fingers over the image. "Why did you vanish like that?" The discoveries of the last few days now held deeper meaning. The bright college student he once knew had become a brave mother, protecting her daughters and hiding secrets he still couldn't fully grasp. Jack tucked the photo safely into his wallet. Tomorrow he would continue his investigation with even greater resolve. It was no longer just about protecting the girls. It was also about understanding what happened to the woman he had once loved, the woman who had apparently kept that memory alive through a single photograph. From the garden, he could hear the Triplets laughing with Maria, 3 living reminders of Rachel, brought back into his life by fate in a way he'd never have imagined. And somewhere, buried in their shared past, lay the key to unraveling this entire story. A call from Dr. Helen came in mid-afternoon, just as Jack was watching the girls play in the garden. "Mr. Morrison," she said, her voice excited, "I just got the results of a deeper investigation into Rachel's family. We found her mother, Sarah Carter. She's at a local senior living facility called Sunset Haven." Jack sat down, stunned. "Her mother is alive? Rachel never—" "Yes, and here's where it gets interesting," Helen went on. "Based on the records we found, they haven't been in contact for years. Sarah has never even met her granddaughters. In fact, it appears she doesn't know they exist." The news hit Jack like a punch. How could a grandmother not know about her own triplets? What kind of rift had driven mother and daughter apart so completely? "Did you learn anything else?" he asked. "Only that Sarah is mentally sound and rarely receives visitors," Helen replied. "Mr. Morrison, considering our fight for custody, contact with their grandmother might be crucial." Jack glanced back at the garden, where Emma, Olivia, and Ava were blissfully unaware of this new twist in their family story. How would he tell them about a grandmother they never knew? A grandmother who, for reasons still unknown, had been completely kept out of their lives. After hanging up, he spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about how to approach the subject with the girls. During dinner, he finally decided to tell them. "Girls," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I found out something about your family, about your grandmother." 3 identical pairs of eyes swung toward him in surprise. "Our grandmother?" Emma asked. "But Mom never mentioned her." "I know," Jack said gently. "She lives in a place called Sunset Haven, a senior facility where older people stay when they need special care. And, well, she doesn't know about you." "Why not?" Olivia pressed, her brow furrowing. "I'm not sure," Jack admitted. "Sometimes families drift apart for complicated reasons, but I wondered if you'd like to meet her." "Only if you want to, of course." The girls exchanged glances in that silent way they had. Ava finally asked, "Will she like us?" "I'm sure she will," Jack said, though his own heart pounded with uncertainty. The next day, after much planning and emotional preparation, they headed to Sunset Haven. It was an older building but well maintained, with a modest garden at the entrance. Throughout the drive, Jack sensed the girls' nervousness and his own. At reception, a young nurse named Paula greeted them, guiding them through softly painted corridors. "Sarah doesn't get many visitors," Paula said as they walked. "She was thrilled when I told her someone was here to meet her." They stopped in front of room 205. "I'll go in first and let her know," Paula said. While they waited in the hall, Jack felt Ava grip his hand more tightly. Emma and Olivia drew closer, seeking reassurance. "It's okay," he whispered. "We're together in this." Paula returned a few minutes later. "You can go in," she said with an encouraging smile. The room was small but cozy, with a window overlooking the garden. Sitting by that window in a recliner was an older woman, her white hair neatly styled. Jack let the girls enter first, following close behind. But the moment his eyes landed on Sarah, it felt like the floor dropped out from under him. That face and those kind eyes, it couldn't be. Sarah turned to see her visitors. A wide smile broke out as she spotted the triplets, 3 little versions of Rachel. But when her gaze met Jack's, her expression changed entirely. Tears began streaming down Jack's face before he even realized he was crying. There, seated in that recliner, was the woman who had changed his life all those years ago. The one who'd fed him when he was starving, who'd helped him study, who'd given him a chance when no one else believed in him. Sarah was Rachel's mother. "Jack?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Oh my God, is it really you?" The girls looked from Jack to Sarah, puzzled. Paula, the nurse, seemed equally taken aback by the unfolding scene. Jack could barely stay upright. How was this possible? Of all the people in the world, how could Sarah be Rachel's mother? Fate had woven their lives together in a way no one could have foreseen. Now, in this small room, all the threads of the past were coming together in a pattern yet to be understood. "Jack, why are you crying?" Emma asked, tugging on his sleeve. "Is she really our grandma?" Olivia asked, her perceptive eyes shifting between him and Sarah. Sarah remained still in her recliner, tears silently falling as she gazed at the 3 girls. 3 tiny mirrors of the daughter she'd never known. Her eyes kept returning to Jack, as though she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Sensing the intensity of the moment, Paula discreetly left the room, shutting the door quietly behind her. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow in the small space that seemed to suspend time itself. So many questions hung in the air, so many stories left untold, so many lost years. Jack knew he would soon have to explain everything, to the girls, to Sarah, to himself. But for now, witnessing this first tentative meeting between grandmother and granddaughters, he could only marvel at how the universe works in mysterious ways. The story that began so long ago, when a hungry teenage boy was shown kindness, still had many chapters left to unfold. As he looked at Sarah in that recliner, Jack felt himself transported back in time to a cold night 20 years earlier, standing outside a small diner in the city center. He was a 16-year-old runaway, starving and terrified, peering through the window at people enjoying warm meals. He hadn't eaten anything more than scraps from trash cans in 3 days after fleeing the orphanage. Sarah had been closing up that diner that night. She saw him shivering outside and, instead of calling the police like so many others would have, opened the door and invited him in. "You must be hungry," she said simply, guiding him to a table in the back. Jack remembered the smell of hot soup she served, the bread still warm from the oven, and the hot chocolate that warmed his cold hands. But more than that, he remembered the dignity with which she treated him. "What's your name?" she asked, sitting down with him as he ate. "Jack," he mumbled between hurried spoonfuls of soup. "Slow down, Jack," she smiled. "The food's not going anywhere." That night, Sarah didn't just feed him, she listened to him. She heard about his dreams of studying, of making something of his life, of one day helping others like himself. Then she did something that changed his life forever. "I have a spare room at my place," she said. "You can stay there on one condition. You go back to school." For 2 years, Sarah was more than just a benefactor. She was a mentor, a guide. She taught him about dignity, about hard work, about never giving up. She helped him with his homework, celebrated his good grades, and encouraged him when life got tough. Snapping back to the present in the small room at Sunset Haven, Jack wiped away the tears streaming down his face. "You helped me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And now fate made it so I could help your granddaughters." Sarah looked from him to the girls, still trying to piece it together. "Jack, how did you find them?" The triplets watched in silence, their wide eyes bouncing between Jack and Sarah, trying to understand the sudden connection forming between them. "It's an incredible story," Jack said, pulling a chair closer to Sarah. "But first, I need to tell you what happened after I lost contact with you. Everything I managed to build, my entire life, it started that night with your bowl of soup and your kindness." Sarah reached out a trembling hand, touching Jack's face as if to confirm he was real. "My boy," she whispered. "I've wondered so many times what happened to you, whether you managed to chase your dreams." "I did," Jack smiled through his tears. "And now, by some miracle of fate, I get to repay the kindness you showed me. Your granddaughters, they need help, Sarah, the same way I once did." The silence that followed was weighted with emotion. 20 years of unspoken stories, separate paths that had only now converged in the most unexpected of ways. The quiet in Sunset Haven's room 205 was heavy with emotions and anticipation. Still reeling from the shock of seeing Jack and meeting her 3 granddaughters, Sarah Carter kept her eyes on the triplets, 3 little reflections of her daughter, Rachel. Spotting the intensity of the moment, Nurse Paula quietly brought more chairs and a pitcher of fresh water, then slipped out, closing the door behind her. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the window, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere in the small room. Sheer curtains fluttered gently in the breeze, carrying the scent of roses from the garden. An old clock on the wall marked the passing seconds with its steady ticking, as though counting down the long-overdue reunion happening before it. "Tell me everything, Jack," Sarah finally said, her voice trembling with emotion. "How did you find my granddaughters? How—" She hesitated, pain etched on her face. "How was Rachel?" Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the story he had to share. The triplets naturally gathered closer to him, Emma and Olivia on nearby chairs, Ava on his lap, the position they had grown used to over the past weeks. "It all started just over a month ago," he began quietly. "I was having dinner alone at Grandma Lucy's diner. It's a simple place, the kind of spot I frequent to remind myself of where I came from." His gaze briefly met Sarah's, sharing an unspoken memory of his early, desperate days. As Jack recounted that fateful evening, watching the girls get kicked out, the manager trying to send them away, their terrified reaction to the mere mention of the police, Sarah observed how he and the triplets interacted. It was obvious they'd already formed a deep bond. Ava nestled comfortably in his arms. Emma reached out for reassurance every so often, and Olivia watched him with those keen, thoughtful eyes so much like Rachel's. "They came into the diner," Jack continued, "three tiny silhouettes shivering from cold and hunger. The moment I saw them, it reminded me of the night you found me, Sarah. The same mix of fear and hope I carried in my eyes." Sarah tightened her grip on the armrest of her recliner, remembering that distant night, so vivid in her mind despite the years. Jack described how he witnessed the girls' desperate conversation with Robert, the manager, and how he decided to follow them when they fled. "When I approached them," he said, "it was like the universe giving me a chance to repay the debt I owed you, Sarah, to do for them what you once did for me." Emma, forever the protector, interrupted softly. "At first, we didn't trust him," she told her grandmother. "Mom always said not to trust strangers. But," she searched for the right words, "there was something different about Jack. He understood our fear of being split up. Because he was scared once or two," Olivia added insightfully. Jack went on, describing how he brought the girls back into the diner, brought them home, and how Maria, his housekeeper, quickly became like a grandmother figure to them. He spoke of discovering their dire situation, the abusive stepfather, Rachel's death, the lengths the triplets had gone to in order to stay together. Sarah absorbed every word, each phrase painting a picture of the life her daughter had built far away from her. Tears welled up when Jack described Rachel juggling 2 jobs to care for the girls. "She didn't have to face it all alone," Sarah murmured. "If only she'd come to me." At that moment, Ava, always the most sensitive, slipped off Jack's lap and timidly approached Sarah. "Why did you and Mommy fight?" she asked, her small voice clear. Looking into the eyes of a granddaughter she'd never known, Sarah felt her heart clench. She knew it was time to share the full story, both for the children's sake and her own. "It happened 15 years ago," she began, adjusting herself in the recliner as though the weight of the past made her sink deeper. "Rachel was in college, chasing her dream of becoming a teacher. She always was so bright, you know. She had a special knack for teaching, this endless patience to explain things." The girls scooted closer, hungry for details about the mother they lost. Sarah continued, "She met a young man in college, Thomas Weber." She noticed how the girls tensed up at the name, quickly adding, "Not the same Tom you knew, but apparently just as troublesome, I later discovered." Jack listened closely as Sarah recounted the story of Rachel's relationship with that earlier Thomas, how he seemed charming and supportive at first, how he gradually showed controlling behavior, how he subtly isolated Rachel from her friends and her future plans. "I saw what was happening," Sarah said, her voice filled with lingering frustration. "I watched my brilliant daughter start doubting herself, watched her let go of her dreams for his. I tried warning her, tried making her see the situation." "And she didn't want to listen," Jack murmured, recognizing a common pattern in abusive relationships. "No," Sarah admitted. "We had a terrible argument. I said things I shouldn't have. She accused me of trying to control her life, said I didn't trust her judgment. And," Sarah swallowed hard, "she said she'd rather never see me again than let me run her life." A heavy silence fell. The girls looked at their grandmother with a mix of compassion and curiosity, while Jack processed the timeline. This rift had likely occurred around the time he and Rachel first met at the coffee shop. "What happened afterward?" Olivia asked, always eager to connect the dots. "Thomas showed his true colors," Sarah said bitterly. "He stole the savings Rachel had set aside for college and ran off with another girl. But Rachel... She closed her eyes, reliving the pain. Rachel was too proud to come home. She moved to another city, barely any contact. Years later, she continued, I heard through acquaintances that she had triplets. I tried reaching out, sent letters, gifts, but she never responded. And now, Sarah gazed at her grandchildren with tear-filled eyes. Now she's gone. And I never got to tell her how sorry I was, how much I loved her despite everything. Mom missed you too, Emma said gently. We used to hear her crying at night, looking at an old box of photos. Sarah broke into sobs. Ava, moved by compassion, reached out and touched her grandmother's cheek with a small hand. Don't cry, Grandma, she said, her sweet sincerity piercing the tension in the room. The simple gesture shattered the final wall between them. Sarah opened her arms, and for the first time she hugged her granddaughters. Emma and Olivia joined the embrace, and for a few precious moments, grandmother and grandchildren allowed themselves to feel the love that should have been there all along. When the emotions settled, Sarah began sharing stories of Rachel as a child and teenager. She talked about Rachel's determination, how she organized classes for her dolls, and how she spent hours at the local library devouring books. She had this notebook, Sarah recalled with a nostalgic smile, where she wrote down all the stories she wanted to tell her future students. She planned to make puppets, stage plays. She had so much passion for teaching. Sounds like Emma, Ava exclaimed. She always makes up bedtime stories for us. Sarah looked warmly at her oldest granddaughter. Just like your mother, she said softly. Rachel also cared for everyone around her. She had a gift for sensing when someone needed help. Is that why she always saved the best piece of pie for me? Jack asked, managing a small smile through the sadness. You met her at the coffee shop, right? Sarah asked. During her college days? Yes, he confirmed. She lit up that place with her smile. She always had a kind word, always seemed to notice when someone was having a bad day. Time slipped by as they shared stories. Sarah told them about Rachel's first day of school, how she insisted on doing her own pigtails, crooked though they were, and how she cried tears of joy upon receiving her first storybook. She was so stubborn, Sarah recalled. Once Rachel set her mind to something, nothing could sway her. I remember when she decided to learn to ride a bike. She must have fallen 100 times, but never gave up. Just like Olivia, Emma chimed in. She once spent 3 days trying to solve a math problem until she got it. Sarah smiled, recognizing the echoes of Rachel in each of her granddaughters. Emma's leadership, Olivia's perseverance, Ava's tender heart. It was as if each carried a piece of their mother within them. You're all so much like her, Sarah said softly. Not just in looks, but in spirit, too. She'd be so proud of the young girls you're becoming. Jack, who had been listening with a full heart, finally spoke. Sarah, I want you to know that I plan on looking after not just the girls, but you as well. We can be a family again, together. But Jack, Sarah protested, after all these years, all this lost time. Lost time is in the past, he interrupted gently. What matters is the future we can build. You changed my life once by giving me a chance. Let me return the favor now. The girls immediately supported the idea, already enthralled by the grandmother they had just met. We can visit every day, Ava suggested enthusiastically, and you can tell us more stories about Mom, Olivia added. And maybe, Jack hesitated briefly, when you're ready, you could move closer to us. There are excellent senior facilities near my estate, or even an adapted apartment, if you prefer more independence. Sarah gazed around the room, her heart overflowing. It's amazing, she said, how fate works in mysterious ways. The boy I once helped is now my granddaughter's savior. It's not a coincidence, Olivia said thoughtfully. Mom always told us we were part of a bigger story. I think she was right. Jack nodded, absorbing the wisdom in the little girl's words. Rachel, unwittingly, had been the thread that linked all their lives. Her love for her daughters, her presence in Jack's past, her unresolved conflict with Sarah, all had conspired to bring them to this very moment. We'll make it work, he promised, locking eyes with Sarah. All of us. A family. Sarah smiled through her tears, extending one hand to Jack while the other clutched her granddaughters. In that small room bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon, a new family was being formed, one built on love, forgiveness, and the incredible ways fate weaves lives together. The old clock on the wall kept ticking steadily, yet now it marked more than just lost time. It signaled the precious moments that lay ahead. Outside, in the garden of Sunset Haven, the roses swayed gently in the breeze, silent witnesses to a brand new beginning that, in some way, Rachel had orchestrated even after she was gone. A year can change a lot of things. That was Jack Morrison's reflection as he watched activity unfold in the garden of his estate from his study window. Sarah, seated in her favorite rocking chair, oversaw the triplets watering the rose bushes they had planted together. A special project begun when Sarah moved into the cozy guest house built for her on the property. The change in Sarah was remarkable. Gone was the fragile woman in the retirement home. She was now a vibrant grandmother with a renewed sense of purpose. The new house, an elegant single-story adapted to her needs, stood just a stone's throw from the main mansion, close enough for the triplets to visit any time, yet offering her independence. "Jack," Emma called from the window. "Time to get ready for the party." He smiled, checking his watch. In a couple of hours, they would all gather at Grandma Lucy's diner to celebrate the triplets' 6th birthday, the same place where, exactly 1 year ago, 3 little runaways had changed his life forever. The past year had been intense. The legal battle for custody wasn't easy, but with Dr. Helen's help and Sarah's testimony, they finally won. Jack still remembered the day the judge's gavel came down, officially granting him adoption rights. The girls had leapt into his arms, crying and laughing all at once, finally secure in the knowledge that no one could separate them. "Daddy!" Ava's voice shook him from his thoughts. It was still both strange and wonderful to hear that word. They'd started calling him that naturally, a few months into the adoption. Heading upstairs, he found the 3 in their separate bedrooms, though they still usually ended up sleeping in the same room. Emma was trying on a new blue dress, Olivia was neatly arranging her books, and Ava was attempting to put a bow tie on Mr. "Hugs, how do I look?" Emma asked, spinning around. "Beautiful," he answered, his heart brimming with love. "All of you are." Maria, still a cherished fixture in the household, appeared with more outfits. "Haven't you 3 decided what to wear yet? We'll be late." Leaving the girls with Maria, Jack went to change himself. In his closet, he paused, glancing at the framed photo of Rachel on his nightstand, the same one the girls had given him a year ago. He wondered how she'd feel seeing her daughters now. Joyful, safe, loved. Grandma Lucy's diner looked entirely different by the time they arrived. Robert, the manager who once tried to send the triplets away, had gone all out with the decorations, colorful balloons, streamers, and a big banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Emma, Olivia, and Ava." "It's perfect," Ava exclaimed, her eyes shining. "You haven't seen the cake yet," Robert grinned, who had become a close family friend over the past year. Ms. Clara, the waitress who first noticed the girls that fateful night, appeared with her warm, maternal smile. Sarah arrived shortly after, looking radiant in a green dress that matched her eyes, the same eyes Rachel had, the same eyes as the girls. Jack helped her settle in at the head table, noticing how healthy and lively she appeared. "I have an announcement," Jack said once everyone was gathered. "In memory of Rachel and to honor everything she stood for, I'm founding the Rachel Carter Foundation." The girls and Sarah gazed at him in surprise. "It will be an organization dedicated to helping single mothers and children at risk," he explained. "So no mother has to go through what Rachel did, and no child has to fear being torn from their siblings." Sarah pressed her hands to her mouth, moved beyond words. The triplets exchanged looks with that familiar, silent communication, as though they, too, had a surprise in store. "We have something for you and Grandma," Emma said, handing him a carefully wrapped package. It was a photo album they had meticulously put together, showing the past year of their lives. The day Sarah moved into her new home, the first time they called her Grandma, the celebration of the official adoption, and everyday moments that had become so precious. Olivia arranged everything in chronological order, Emma explained. And I picked the stickers, Ava said proudly. Tears rolled freely down Sarah's cheeks as she flipped through the pages. Just look at us, she whispered. A real family. How about a photo to start the next album? Robert suggested, bringing out a professional camera. Everyone lined up, Jack in the middle, the triplets in front, Sarah by his side. Mr. Hugs, of course, was front and center on Ava's lap. Everyone say family, Robert called. At that moment, as the flash popped, Jack reflected on how it had all begun. Sarah's single act of kindness to a hungry boy long ago, which led to another act of kindness on a cold night when he found 3 terrified little girls, which set off a chain of events culminating in this very celebration. Love, he thought, was like that. A force that multiplies, transforms lives, mends old wounds, and creates new beginnings. Somewhere, Rachel was surely smiling. One more shot, Ava yelled, and everyone laughed, repositioning themselves for another photo. Grandma Lucy's diner, where a year earlier 3 frightened children had been turned away, now bore witness to their progress. The walls that once saw fear in their eyes now resonated with their laughter. The place where everything started now celebrated not just a birthday but the making of a family. Jack glanced at his daughters, because that's what they were now, officially and emotionally, and at Sarah, who had become a second mother to him and a devoted grandmother to the girls. He thought of Rachel, how fate had woven all these lives together in such mysterious, beautiful ways. "Dad," Emma called, "come look at the cake." He smiled, joining his family. The future lay open before them, full of promise and possibility. All because years ago a woman named Sarah had decided to help a street kid who grew up unable to ignore 3 little girls in need. Love really did have the power to transform everything. After the party ended and everyone returned home, Jack found his daughters still awake. Gathered in the room they continued to share by choice. Sarah was with them, telling yet another story about a younger Rachel. "That's when your mum decided she was going to teach all the kids on the block to read," Sarah recounted, her eyes glowing at the memory. "She set up a tiny library under the old oak in our yard." Jack stood by the doorway, watching the scene. Emma, Olivia, and Ava listened, rapt, soaking in every detail of their mother's life. The photo album they'd given earlier lay open between them, showing the past year, one filled with healing, growth, and love. On the album's last page, there was space for one more photo. Tomorrow, they would slip in the new picture taken today, everyone together, smiling, celebrating not just a birthday, but the extraordinary journey that had led them here. "Time for bed," Jack said softly once Sarah finished her story. Helping to tuck them in, Emma in the middle as usual, Olivia and Ava on either side, he marveled at how much life could change in a year. The frightened little girls he'd met that cold night had become cheerful, secure children. Sarah had regained her health and her joy, and he had found the true meaning of family. "Good night, Daddy," they murmured in unison, music to his ears. Jack kissed each of them, then walked Sarah to her little house in the garden. Along the way, they stopped to admire the roses they had planted together, a symbol of the fresh start they had all cultivated. "Rachel would be proud," Sarah said quietly. "Of all of us," Jack agreed, gazing at the star-filled sky. Somewhere, Rachel had to be smiling, seeing her daughters safe and loved, her mother finally at peace, and how fate had brought all these lives together so seamlessly. The Rachel Carter Foundation would only be the beginning, a means to ensure other families got their second chance, to transform pain into hope, loneliness into unity. Because sometimes all it takes is one person reaching out, exactly when someone else needs it most, just as Sarah had done for him all those years ago, and just as he had done for the girls on that night at the diner. One act of kindness truly can change the world, one life, one family, one heart at a time.